thank you very much, everybody, for attending today's webinar. This is the first of a series of webinars as a result of the partnership and collaboration that we've put in place between Constructionline and the Supply Chain Sustainability School. My name's Rob Bolton. I'm Chief Operating Officer at Constructionline, and on with me is EJ Allen from the Supply Chain Sustainability School. So, hello, EJ. How's it going?
Hi. Yeah, all good. Thanks.
Excellent. Cool. So the social value has been something that within Constructionline we've really started to incorporate in the platform for the members of the network over the last well, certainly since October last year. And I don't want to steal too much of EJ's thunder, but we've certainly seen over the last couple of years, as a result of changes in public procurement, almost like the direction that public procurement has been advised to go in relation to social value and how they should engage with the private sector and how they should weight the bids and tenders that they're assessing. And that has had quite a big knock-on impact into how certainly a number of Constructionline customers, especially on the buying side of our network, have come to us, look to ask us, what can we do to help them understand social value within their supply chain and help them source, take into account social value. And as a consequence of that, it's meant that we have, last October, we launched the social value scheme, which is loosely based on a public procurement notice that EJ will no doubt touch on. And in the not too distant future, there's a whole webinar just on that public procurement notice. So we launched a scheme in October that was designed by, not actually by Constructionline, it was actually designed by a consortium of the big contractors in the UK, so the likes of Kia, Balfour Beatty, etc. We launched that in October. The adoption rate has been very, very good. We were up to about 60% of the Constructionline network. About 20,000 firms have already completed the social value scheme, and they're having the opportunity to tell the story that they have from a social value perspective, but also learn about social value as part of doing that. And as a consequence of that, we really identified that there was quite a big gap in understanding, and ourselves in the Supply Chain Sustainability School, come together and looking to really help drive knowledge and understanding within the construction industry, especially about why social value is important, what it means, and how firms can actually implement it into the business. Obviously, to actually, deliver social value and have a beneficial impact on the local environment, and I mean that in every sense of the word, but also fundamentally to help you guys, certainly on the supplier and subcontractor side, help you ensure that you have good sustainable business models going forward as this becomes more and more important. So before I go on too much, I think, and I take too much of EJ's content, I'm going to hand over to EJ so that she can start off this session to help you guys get this understanding of social value and why it's important to the industry, and hopefully you'll see why it's important to your businesses specifically. Thank you very much, EJ.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rob. Hi, everyone. Great to see there's so many of you joining today. So I'm EJ. I'm a consultant at Action Sustainability, which is the delivery partner that sits behind the school. And I also look after the construction and homes markets within the Supply Chain Sustainability School. So I work very closely with the supply chain, commercial procurement leads and the sustainability leads among our main contractor and key home builder partners. Okay, so today is very much about, I suppose, introductory level to social value. So if there are any experts on social value here today, you're probably in the wrong place. It's very much about starting to understand what we mean by social value. I'm jumping ahead, actually. What we need to do is, first of all, is a little bit of housekeeping. So I think we've muted your microphones just because of the sheer numbers. There's nothing worse than having somebody who's forgotten to turn their mic off with all sorts of noise in the background. So if you have any questions, we'll have time at the end for you to just pop your questions in the Q&A, and then Rob and I will have a look through those at the end and answer as many as we can. As we're doing the session, we're going to be using a platform called Menti, so which means it's interactive. We've got some questions for you, some word clouds, some polls. So if you've got a phone, please leave it on. Or if you have a spare browser, that would be great. We'll be recording the session, I believe. I think Toby's recording this, and the slides will be shared with you all afterwards. So hopefully that's good news. You don't have to make loads of notes. And at the end, we'd love to get your feedback. So there will be a link that will appear in the chat, or when you close the webinar down, the link will appear. So please do take the time to share feedback. Okay, so yes, learning objectives. I already talked about it, it's introductory level. So what we're going to look at today is helping you to understand what social value is and why it matters, touching on the social value model PPN 0620, which Rob mentioned earlier on. And hopefully after today, you'll be able to explain what social value means, and you'll feel comfortable doing that. I think very often with the topic social value, it often sounds very complicated and a bit academic at times, and hopefully we'll look at kind of simplifying that. And what we want to look at as well is providing you with some kind of structure for how to manage your social impacts. What we're not doing today is going into the depth around things like social value tools and monetization. We'll potentially cover that off in later sessions. Okay, right. So first of all, I'd like you to grab your phones, or if you have a spare web browser, and then just go to this platform, menti.com. So it's menti.com. You don't need an app or anything, it's really simple. And then once you're in, it will prompt you for a code, and the code there is on the screen. So it's 11254954. Okay, I'm going to change my screens, but don't panic. The code will still be there for you in a moment. Hold on. Okay. Oh, brilliant. There's some keen people already in there. So once you're in, what I'd like you to do is just note down the first words that spring to mind when you think of social value. This is completely anonymous. We don't know who's submitting what. Okie doke. So let's see what comes up. Okay, community. Yes, I think very often when we hear about social value, things like community benefits and section 106, they're things that we've been familiar with and we often associate with social value. It's not a new concept, is it? That's it. They're coming in thick and fast now. I'm guessing you're familiar with word clouds, that the bigger the word, the more of you are putting in that answer. Employment, sustainability. Yes, interestingly, social value is kind of increasingly used as a substitute for the word sustainability or sustainable procurement. It sometimes means different things to different people. Lots of good ideas coming in here. Impact, absolutely. Whoever said that, well done. It's really key in social value. And again, we're going to be looking at that very, very shortly when we look at definitions. Added value, humanity, engaging, charities, responsibility. Yes, absolutely. When we'll look at the drivers as to why you're all here today. Some businesses will just say we're a responsible business and we need to be delivering social value. Giving back. What else have we got here? Accountability. I'm getting closer and closer to the screen with my eyes. Apprentices, yes. Fantastic. And I think I've seen somebody's written environment as well, because the environment we live in impacts our life and our quality of life and our well-being. Fantastic. Okie doke. Right. So thank you for that. So let's move on to, I think there's another question for you here. Oh, you've all been given an avatar. Is there a legal definition for social value? Look at your phone and just answer yes or no. Brilliant. Looks like you've all got the hang of Menti. There's at least 100 of you in there. Okay, brilliant. So no, correct, well done. And 40 of you said yes. You'd think there would be, but there isn't. The definitions, yeah, we're going to look at definitions right now. Okay, so let's go back to my slides. Bear with me. Let me sort these out. Okay, so let's have a think about what it means. I've put here a few definitions that are out there. Lots of definitions around, but I've included the first one at the top there, which is from the Public Services Social Value Act 2012, or people often refer to it as the Social Value Act. It really did put social value kind of on the map back in 2012. They talk about, they were thinking of it from a procurement perspective, how what is proposed to be procured might improve the economic, social and environmental well-being of the relevant area. Okay, so things to think about there. It's got those three pillars of sustainable development, the economic, the social and environmental. And it talks about well-being. So that makes us think about people, quality of life on the relevant area. So I'll come back to the relevant area in a minute. Then we've got Social Value UK, which is the professional body for social value. They talk about the relative importance that people put on changes they experience in their lives. So those can be positive changes or negative changes. So kind of positive impacts and negative impacts. Think about those. The one that I think that I'm going to refer to throughout this session is this one here from Symmetrica, which talks about social value being the total impact. So, well, whoever said impact earlier on, absolutely. The total impact on people's quality of life. I've chosen that one because it's fairly simple. It's not too wordy, and I think it helps us understand actually, yeah, the impact on people's quality of life. And again, it can be positive impact or a negative impact. The other thing I want to kind of go back to is that idea in the Public Services Act at the top. It talks about the well-being in the relevant area. That's absolutely crucial in social value. When we're talking about social value, we need to be thinking, what are the specific social value priorities in that particular area? So if you're talking about Scotland as a whole, if Scotland were talking about their social value priorities, they'd be looking at, well, what are the societal issues and challenges in the whole of Scotland? Whereas if you'd be talking about specific deprived boroughs of London, they'd have very different social value priorities compared to some of the kind of wealthier areas. We'll keep coming back to this as we go through. So just think about social value. It's really important to think about a particular community or a particular geographical area. Okay. Right, so let's have a look at one of the clients. When they talk about social value, what do they mean? I've chosen Network Rail. They've recently published their new social value framework. When they talk, and I'm guessing many of you are in the Network Rail supply chain. When they talk about social value, they talk about identifying and maximizing positive impacts on people and managing or mitigating negative ones, which I quite like. And it talks, I've put the quote there at the bottom about social value management is about adding value, not cost. Okay. So if we turn back the clock to about, I don't know, 5 years ago, maybe more, people would always think of things like local jobs, apprenticeships, community engagement. But as I mentioned earlier on, social value is increasingly being used as that almost a proxy term for sustainability. So what Network Rail have done here, and you can all see this in their social value framework, they've mapped out the activities that contribute to social value onto the three pillars of sustainable development: the economic, the social, and the environment. So for Network Rail, when we're thinking about, okay, what's important to them, they need to be thinking, who are the people they're trying to improve the quality of life of? Who are those people? Well, if we think about that, it's the people who travel on the trains. It's the people who live around or close or near to the railways, and it's people who are employed by Network Rail as well, and their supply chain. So bearing in mind their stakeholder group or people whose lives they're looking to improve is very large. So when they start to map out what are all the activities they can do to generate social value, this is what it looks like. And it's fairly simple, kind of straightforward terms, and lots of the words here appeared in that word cloud earlier on. So just pick on a few to give you an idea. So if you look on the left hand side at the bottom, you can see that air quality is there. So if Network Rail, if there's construction work going on and there's diesel guzzling plants, that's reducing the air quality of the people who live in the local area. Huge issues with air quality. I think there was a CBI report a few years ago. that said that if we improved air quality in England in line with WHO guidelines, it could prevent over 17,000 premature deaths. So it reduces the overall quality of life in that particular area. What other ones have we got here? Apprenticeships. You know, if you hire apprentices who live locally to where you work, that's impacting on local unemployment, helping boost local employment and access entry level to jobs. You've got decarbonisation there on the top left. Anything that Network Rail is doing to look at helping to decarbonise is all delivering social value. We're all impacted by climate change. We've got the extreme weather, increased flooding, and that links again down on that right-hand side to things like weather resilience and climate change adaptation. And then there's lots there linking to training and skills. We talked about apprenticeships and ways that Network Rail can help to tackle economic inequality, ultimately improving people's lives. So the scope of social value is fairly broad. So I just wanted to get us to start thinking about what do we mean by social value? Okay. Right, back to Menti again. I should have said don't close it down. Yeah, grab your phones. What I'd like you to do now is, I think we've got another question for you. Let's have a look. That's it. Why? So now we've started to think about what social value, why does it matter? Why is it important? Why does it matter? Ideally, think about it from your organisation's perspective, if you can. Okay, and all the results will just pop up. It's all anonymous again. Mental and physical well-being, future-proofing, resiliency, exactly. Enhances our brand. Interesting. That's the kind of the business case. Giving back to the community, yes, fantastic. Let's have a look. They're coming in thick and fast. Businesses have the power to affect change, yes. They really do. There's been a huge drive around this, you know, the social value resources that we have in the school and the webinars that we have really do reflect that increased drive from clients who are driving this down their supply chain. Addressing the skill shortage, yes, it's a huge skill shortage at the moment. Well-being, making a change. Yep, helping to improve the lives of local people, exactly. It affects everyone now and in the future. Brilliant, this is great, keep them coming in. Engaging the local community and workforce in a positive way. Exactly, it's thinking about the stakeholder groups. When we're talking about social value, it's always going back to thinking about who are those people whose lives we're trying to kind of we're trying to improve the quality of life for which people, which stakeholders, and it's different depending on which projects you're working on. Internalizing the social of costs and benefits of a project. Yeah, somebody said, I work in construction and we do a lot of harm and we need to give back to the community and the world. Okay, brilliant. So lots of ideas here on why social value matters. Feel free to chip in, Rob, by the way, if you see anything that you want to look at. Employees want to work with purpose. Yes, we're going to look at these in a bit more detail in a moment. So fantastic. I'm going to share all these with you after the session anyway. So you've got all these to help you think about the why. Right, let's go back to my slides. So we did a survey of our school partners. I think it was about 80 of them were involved, and this was 2 years ago, so it was just before COVID. So the results may have changed somewhat, but I thought it was interesting to share the feedback. So when we asked them, why does social value matter? The three kind of almost headings that we came up with were improved well-being for stakeholders. And again, bearing in mind, stakeholders can be where your project is, it could be your employees, your clients, your supply chain. So improve well-being, that piece around, I suppose, the business case and helping clients achieve project and organizational objectives. And then the other area was that piece around business benefits, the business case, and some of those strong kind of strong examples of the business case for social value came up a moment ago. So let's have a look at these in a bit more detail. So well-being. So what do we mean by well-being? Whenever we run workshops and ask people, you know, what words spring to mind when we talk about well-being, we get things like health, happiness, choices, satisfaction in life, feeling like life is worthwhile, feeling confident. And people's health is directly linked to the wealth associated with where they live. So a statistic I remember that hit me was, before the pandemic, the least deprived parts of England lived on average 19, people who lived in the least deprived area lived on average 19 more years in good health than people in the most deprived. And then it was about directly addressing meaningful societal issues for stakeholder groups. So societal issues can be anything from social isolation, poor air quality, debt, problems with drugs, poverty, and so on. So it's about having an opportunity to try and address some of these societal issues in where your projects are taking place or where you work. And then it's about minimizing the negative impacts to stakeholder groups as a result of project activities. So things like noise, minimizing noise, minimizing light pollution, all of these things are helping reduce the negative impact. So when you start to think about societal issues, for example, and social value, if you've got an area that, say, struggles with high unemployment, and you're thinking about, well, what can I do to deliver social value? Is it better to invest in a new park, a new green space, or is it better to help with a community recruitment program? Okay, clearly it's the latter, but it's just to get you thinking that social value very much depends on what those societal issues are in the area, in that geographical location, no matter how big or small it is that you're looking at. So it's a very tailored approach. There's no kind of one size fits all. Okay. Business benefits. So this piece at the top around improving workforce satisfaction and engagement and retention, linking back to the skills challenge. That piece around attracting and retaining staff is huge, and always trying to look at improving access to talent, helping to win tenders and new business. I was speaking at one of our large main contractor, kind of to their procurement teams and wider sustainability teams before Christmas. And they said social value for them was the differentiator in winning work. And PPN 0620, we'll look at that later, puts that minimum requirement of 10% of the tender evaluation on just social value.
I mean, we're definitely seeing across a lot of the big buys in the network that social value is becoming even more important. Amy, for example, ran quite a big event in the Cambridgeshire area, I think it was, and it was around a £1 billion project to do with highways, and the event was literally about social value. They were literally getting the local supply chain in to make them understand the importance of social value and how important it was for Amy, so that people could include it in their tenders for as they were going to start going through this bids and tenders process over in the imminent future and over the next couple of years as well. The other thing I would also say about workforce retention is, I mean, we also have a business in France, and in France, it's incredible how important social value is for the employees there. And here in the UK, we're now starting to see even more, especially as we get more of the younger generation coming through. It is incredibly important for them, and we're often being asked, how does this benefit the wider community? What are we doing to actually help with these topics as a business, given the reach, and really starting to challenge us as a business to think about, what can we do directly to help the community, but also what can we do as a platform to help our customers help the wider community and the environment.
Yeah, brilliant. And because it creates that sense of kind of pride and belonging as well, when your organization's taking this seriously.
Yeah.
you know, we've seen examples of tenders that have gone out as well with up to 35% of the weighting on social value, and those typically will be where the project will be in a particularly deprived area where are the huge social value challenges, so it has to be a big priority. But it's only going one way, isn't it? It's just becoming more and more important.
Yeah, the Department of Education did a very large framework middle of last year, and we start to see some quite significant expectations around social value KPIs starting to be evidenced in there, and in the framework tenders that we've seen come through since, that is only increasing and also becoming less generalized and actually becoming quite specific as well.
Yes, and it comes with its challenges, doesn't it, around cascading that down to the supply chain and with SMEs and helping them understand how to articulate the business case in order to gain traction internally. But hopefully sessions like today will help. Yeah. There's that investors piece as well, which is huge. Investors are really interested in live current issues such as well-being, as climate emergency, COVID recovery, and they consider sustainability and ESG just as another part of the business risk assessment. I think gone are the days where it's okay to have that lovely, you know, not glossy, the glossy brochure days are long gone, but to have those kind of, you know, this is what we're doing and just a few tick boxes, and there's no real explanation of actually what an organization has done and its impact. I think, you know, kind of just high level fluffy reports that don't really tell you anything, I think they're kind of very quickly disappearing. And that piece around improving relationship with communities as well, you can't underestimate how important that is. If you've got a large project in a community where and the community aren't happy, they can cause huge delays. It can have huge cost impact on the cost of the job. So it really is about improving that relationship with communities as well. So if you're struggling with a business case, things like this will help. And within the school, we've got all sorts of videos and case studies and I'll signpost to those at the end, but this is just to start to get you thinking, some initial help. Clients are really driving this agenda. Rob and I have just given some examples there of clients who are, you know, this is being driven. Local authorities just don't have enough money to address these societal issues themselves with their budgets. They don't have enough budget, so they have to drive this down through their procurement. So things like poverty, skills gap, digital divide, social isolation, poor air quality. This is all about social value. Okay, so next we have another poll for you. So if you grab your phones again and go to 11249254954. Hopefully you haven't closed that down. And then let me go to the next bit. Oh, here we go. Can you rank the top 3 reasons to why your organisation is interested in social value? This one will take you a bit longer because I know you have to go through each one and rank it. So we've got things like, we've got client requirements, we've got investor or shareholder expectations, we've got that piece around attracting and retaining staff, managing corporate reputation, improving relationships with the communities in which we work, local authority expectations, that piece around managing reputation, legacy, creating a lasting legacy, personal leadership. Is it somebody within your organisation who's really driving this? Is it about risk? What does it look like for you? We seem to have a firm winner. Oh, there's only 30 of you responded. We'll wait a bit, but I'm going to guess that client requirements is going to stay there at the top. Competitive advantage. That's really interesting. To improve relationships with the communities in which we work. Okay. I guess I'm not surprised by client requirements being there at the top. And yeah, assuming there's a lot of main contractors here. Competitive advantage, yes, absolutely. Or if it's the wider supply chain, that's great that those requirements, from my perspective, are being cascaded down the supply chain. You clearly understand that piece around relationships with the communities in which you work. Any surprises there, Rob, from your perspective? Anything you expected to be higher or lower?
No, in some ways, I'm actually glad client requirements is up there, because it means we're starting to see it really come down through the supply chain, because certainly I would say probably 18 months ago that wasn't so much the case, and to get such a high coverage here means it is starting to really come through, which, you know, really as you would kind of expect, because the ultimate clients, the treasury, as you say, you're absolutely using this investment to pull on these levers to generate that coming through the supply chain. Competitive advantage, I suppose that kind of relates to one as well, and I definitely think that people who embrace it early on, without a doubt, are going to see quite a significant competitive advantage. I think as time goes by, creating that competitive advantage is probably going to take more effort, but people who actually invest in this in the near term are probably going to be able to create quite a significant competitive advantage over the next couple of years, whilst awareness and the understanding actually filters through the industry.
And from when we do a lot of work with SMEs, or when we run training workshops specifically for SMEs, that very often they'll be saying, we don't know, we don't know what to do. We've been asked to talk about social value. And when you look at what they're doing, very often they're already doing a lot of activities that will contribute social value, but they just hadn't thought of them in that way. So it's about helping people, I suppose, articulate what they're doing to gain that competitive advantage as well.
Yeah, I mean, in the social value scheme that we have, we ask some questions around things like, do people run apprenticeship schemes and things like that? And it's really positive to see that I think about 50% of respondees are actively running apprenticeship schemes as part of their organisation. They probably don't realise, but that is actually one of the key social value metrics. So, if people are doing that, they need to make sure that they're bringing that front and centre as part of their particular story for their company.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Okie doke. Right, let's go back. Let's see what, I think I have a slide on what, when we asked our partners the same question, what they responded. Yes, here we go. Again, bear in mind, this was just the beginning of 2020. We are going to do a new survey, but this is the results from just before COVID. So that piece around, the skills shortage, about attracting and retaining staff, came out at the joint up with improving the relationships with the communities in which we work. So that second priority, that mirrors what you had before and client expectations as well. So that's great. So your responses to that are very much in line with either your peers or your customers. Okay, right, so let's have a look now at the legislative context. And don't worry, I'm not going to go into huge amounts of detail on the legal side of things. I'm certainly not a legal expert, but we do need to talk about, I suppose, two key pieces of legislation. So there's a Public Services Act 2012. That's the one I referred to as the Social Value Act earlier on. So that was designed to enable public spending to leverage value in all three pillars of sustainable development. So the idea of that triple bottom line. So it was not just looking at financial benefit, but social and environmental benefit as well. Within the Public Services Act 2012, public sector were required to consider how the services they buy might improve social, economic and environmental well-being of the area, the relevant area. So it was around how to ensure investments kind of produce that wider benefit to community. Okay, so they were required to consider that. So it was a great start, did a great job of raising awareness and putting social value on the map. But it wasn't a mandate there. So it almost lacked the teeth to drive real change, although it did certainly help pointing things in the right direction. But after the Social Value Act came out, you did start to see people starting to think more about, we need a social value policy. And yeah, so it certainly set things moving in the right direction. And then in 2020, we had Procurement Policy Note 0620, which we refer to, you'll hear it talked about as PPN 0620. Now, this is a game changer. I think we've already given away the key thing about PPN 0620, which is that 10% of the contract value, 10% of the value of the evaluation criteria is on social value. So, and it mandates it. So there's a real difference there between the Public Services Act and the PPN 0620. It's that mandated approach.
Yeah.
So
well, it's actually a minimum. Yeah, it's a minimum which put there of 10%. And just before you go into it, the whilst not legislation, and it's worth people going and have a look for this. There's something called the Construction Outsourcing Playbook, which actually provides guidance to both the public sector and also to the industry about how public procurement in and around construction should work. And they've really push hard on the importance of PPN 0620. But then at the very end of the document, I think it's something like page 76, I might have read it a few times, there's a table which actually says for what kind of behaviours they expect, and it says for the public sector and also for the industry. And one of the things they're very, very clear about is that the principles of the Construction Outsourcing Playbook should be pushed down through the supply chain by the private sector. Very, very explicit about this, and really real strong emphasis on 0620. Now, whilst this isn't legislation, it is that those playbooks that the Crown Commercial Services, etc., put out, they are pretty much taken as gospel by the public sector organisations. I definitely recommend, not just from a social value perspective, but from an overall understanding how public procurement is being directed and how they should think about these things. It's definitely worth you going and having a read of that document, because what you see there is definitely going to be coming down more and more down through the supply chain to organisations like yourselves.
Yeah, and off the back of that, I was going to say exactly the same thing about PPN 0620. Yes, you can see the in-scope organisations there who need to evaluate with that minimum weighting of 10%, but you're starting to see private sector and local authorities is following suit. So Siemens, Network Rail, and others are already using PPN 0620. And like you said, it's a minimum of 10%. And it's the commercial team within the organisation that gets to choose which social value themes to look at, so that they can have that tailored approach and think, well, this is our project, these are the stakeholders in that area. What are the social value themes we need to be focusing on? What are the societal challenges and issues? And they can apportion that weighting accordingly. So there's that flexibility there to be able to have that tailored approach that you absolutely need in social value. And the other key piece is around evaluation of the aspects, social value aspect of the bids should be qualitative. So that helps provide more of that even playing field for SMEs, for social enterprises, and so on, so that they can show their in-depth knowledge and connection to local areas and the impacts that can be generated. So it's a big shift in thinking. That generic response, social value response that you may have had for all contracts is no longer, it's no longer an option. You need to show your understanding that social value is a combination of different impacts, and thinking both from a positive and negative impacts as well. So these are the different themes that you have in the PPN 0620. I'm not going to go into detail, but I will wave. I'm not sure it's going to come out. Can you see? No. I'm going to share this around. This is really absolutely crucial document. It's the social value model quick reference table. And what it has in there is it has all of these policy outcomes, and then you've got the model response guidance for tenderers and evaluators, and you've got reporting metrics as well. So that I'll send a link afterwards. It really does have all of those activities that you can do under each of these headings that are here. So under COVID-19 recovery, you've got things like retraining, career advice, improving transport links, providing support for people with long COVID, providing work experience. Under tackling economic inequality, it's things like inclusive procurement, supply diversity, again, apprenticeships, innovation and disruptive technologies, supply chain collaboration. And again, all of this is in that quick reference table that you can look at. You've got fighting climate change, which yeah, I think we're all more familiar with that one. Effective stewardship of the environment. You've got the equal opportunity, or those of you involved in the school, things like the FAIR programme, the Fairness, Inclusion and Respect programme. We've got the well-being piece, which is all around, I suppose, looking to improve community cohesion, having that common vision and sense of belonging, providing that common vision and sense of belonging for people within the communities in which you're working in. Yeah, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about that, but there is lots of information available, and we'll be sending the links out afterwards. So within PPN 0620, you've got the themes, the policy outcomes, the model award criteria, the model evaluation questions, and the model response guidance. So there's a lot in there, and the reporting metrics. Okay, so what we're going to just look at now before we finish for questions is just to start to think about how do you manage social value? Where do you start? What do you do? And what you can see in front of you here is, you know, it'll be familiar to many of you. It's the whole idea of plan, do, measure, review. Works with everything. So if you kind of put your social value hat on and start to think about this, at the plan stage, it's about thinking, okay, we can't do everything. There's no one size fits all. At this point, it's really crucial that you consult with stakeholders to understand what are those societal issues and challenges that you're looking to help address. And as we talked about before, stakeholders could be your employees, your supply chain, but the people who are working on the project, but the community where the project is happening as well. So there's lots of different ways. You can do surveys, you can do engagement events. Yeah, lots of suggestions around that. And again, we've got guidance in the school that can help you with all of this. But it's most importantly trying to think, what is it you're trying to achieve and for who? Okay. And if you think about that, that really does help you focus on where to focus efforts. So thinking about that, an example that I often use is if you were to offer a work placement to a young person from a local school, it's likely that opportunity will give them a better understanding maybe of the world of work, but it might not significantly impact their career choice or their career plans. However, if that same placement was offered to somebody with learning difficulties, that could well be the difference between them getting a future job or not. So it's the same investment in terms of time. It's a 1 week work placement, but different audiences have very different impacts. And you can see the one there, the last one has a much bigger impact than the first. So same activity, but a different impact. And you always need to be thinking like that when we're talking about social value. And also think about kind of immediate and long-term impacts as well. So let's say you did a volunteering day with your business and you cleaned up a local park. It's likely that local park may well just get quite messed up again in the next month, and you're kind of back to where you started. However, if you helped create some kind of community group and give them the skills or tools to maintain and look after that garden, then you're setting yourselves up to succeed rather than kind of, you know, that kind of putting a plaster on something and that, you know, making the garden nice again, but then in a month's time it's all kind of back to how it was. So always start to think about things in this way. At the planning stage as well, it's about thinking about policies. Policies are a great place to define the drivers, the definitions, how you're going to deliver this, having that smart action plan in place so that there are people with responsibilities for driving this forward. Then it's the do phase, which is, you know, go on and do it. It should be really easy, right? Not so easy. And again, not such a uniform approach, but if you get that plan piece, that gives you the direction. It's about working smarter, not harder. Not trying to do everything all in one go. And it's about having good internal processes. I know quite a few of our partner organisations and school members, they've set up social value groups now within their business, and they share ideas, they share lessons learned, and they share case studies. So that's something you may want to think about. So on the measuring side of things, this is where we tend to get the most questions, and we're not going to go into a huge amount of detail today. It's just more to think about what to measure and how. So a few tips I'm going to give you here. So when we're talking about social value, you need to think about these areas here. It sounds a bit confusing to start with. You've got your inputs, outputs, outcomes, and impacts. So on the left-hand side, this is what you're putting into the project. So it could be volunteer hours. It could be the amount of money you're donating. Could be community investment. Sorry, volunteer hours. Then you've got the output. So that would be, in the example here, 40 young people experiencing career and interview support. Or it could be something like, from creating 10 apprenticeships, 5 have successfully completed an accredited program. Okay, so that's inputs and outputs, and they're fairly easy to measure and record. But then as you move to that right hand side, things start to get trickier. So you've got outcomes. So that's the wider effect. So you've got here the change to the levels of confidence of individual young people, and this could be measured via a survey. So it's harder to measure. And then you've got the impact on the right hand side. That's that so what piece. That's the kind of, the change here to educational and career paths of young people. Another example I often use is an input would be staff time spent volunteering to help adults with learning disabilities try travelling by train. The output would be the number of adults benefiting from taking part in the scheme. And then you've got the outcome, which is the number of people feeling more confident to travel by train. Okay. But then at the end of all that, you've got the so what piece, the big question, the so what. And in that example, what you have is the individuals, the adults would be more independent, and it improves their job prospects and improves their self-confidence. Okay. So it's thinking about who does what to who, how, and who benefits. Okay. So it gets harder as you go along the right hand side, but it's that impact that we're really looking at when we're talking about social value. This is just some examples of plans, targets and indicators and metrics. But as I said, have a look in that social value model, and you'll have all sorts of metrics and targets and indicators in there. So there is help out there for you. So if we're looking at benchmarks, I'm not going to go into detail about these. I just wanted to show you some of the benchmarks that are used by our supply chain school partners. Just looking along there. So you've got Living Wage Foundation. I'm sure many of you are Living Wage accredited. You've got things like the 5% Club, which is organisations who are aspiring to achieve 5% of their workforce in earn and learn positions. So apprenticeships, sponsored students, graduate training schemes, and so on. You've got Ethical Trading Initiative, Fair Tax, but there's plenty out there. And again, you can look at these within the school, but those are just some ideas of benchmarks. Yeah, I've mentioned that before. And then the last piece, you might hear, I'm sure many of you are very familiar with monetizing social value. It's a really hot topic, and there are lots of different tools out there that people are using. It's an area where people are competing, and the tools provide a monetized kind of proxy value for a specific input, output, or outcome. Okay, so that's when you talk about monetizing social value, that's the kind of the thinking behind it. So what the schools, we've been told by our members and our partners that it's very confusing. There's a lot of social value tools out there. There's things like Social Value Portal, National TOMS, there's Hacked Social Value Bank, there's Loop, there's Thrive, there's Social Value Engine, there's Impact, there's Sustainability Tool. There's lots of them out there. So I think it's probably next week we're going to be publishing a report that maps out all of those different tools, and it looks at, it's not a recommending one over another, it's talking about what they actually do, what they're used for, who uses them, licensing information, what methodology it uses, where it gets monetized value, where it gets its proxy values from, and so on. So hopefully that will help you all. Yeah, so it's coming soon. Watch this space. We'll be shouting about that on social media, and we'll make sure we send an email to all of you. And then this is, I think this is my last slide before the signposting, which is the review piece. Don't forget to shout and celebrate and share what you've done. So often within social value, we find out that people have got some really good stories to share, but because they hadn't thought of them as being social value, they've not put together case studies, and they've not shared them. It's really important. And it does help with that sense of pride for your own business as well, when you can share those stories. It does take a bit of, I suppose, time and effort. We're all guilty of, not writing up case studies, but do it. It really is worth it. An example of reporting social value, I often use this as an example of, if you're doing things, try and think of a way of sharing it in an engaging way. I like this from Wilmot Dixon. It uses terms like what we've invested in our people, so you can see the inputs, but it also has those stories there around the impact. So I think it talks about enhancing the lives of 10,000 young people. There's a quote in there: "Thank you for helping me to be able to provide for my family whilst in prison." So think about how you share your successes. And then these are just some signposting to resources that we've got within the school. The links will be embedded in the slides when we send them out to you. The HMP Foston Hall one on the left-hand side there, that's a great one. That's Balfour Beatty working with, I think it's Derby City Council and Reconomy. And it was looking around how they worked with custodians of Foston Hall, and they taught the women to deconstruct street lamps from Derby City, and they deconstructed them, and they ended up decommissioning 14,000 street lamps, delivering £34,000 worth of social value. There were all sorts of benefits around improving the confidence of the custodians, so they're more likely to get a job when they came out of prison, and it also had a great circular economy story as well, so I like that one. So these are just signposting to some areas that can help. And Rob, do you want to talk about the offering, I suppose, from Constructionline around this?
Yeah, so obviously one of the best ways to enable social value in the projects that you're working on, as EJ just said, is using the social enterprises. One of the things we often hear is that there's almost a barrier of entry for social enterprises to get things like be compliant to the right level, get health and safety accreditations. There's a cost associated with that. So at Constructionline, what we have done is we've essentially said anybody who we can confirm is a social enterprise, we will give a free gold membership, which is Common Assessment Standard plus health and safety, the SSIP accreditation for them as well. So trying to remove as much of a barrier from that as possible. The way that it works, we have a form on our website, and I think Billy was going to put the link in the chat in a second. We have a form on the website where you can essentially introduce a social enterprise to us. So, yeah, thank you very much, Billy. And what happens is, we work with an organisation called Supply Change, who assess and certify that an organisation is a social enterprise, because it's to do with certain things of how much of their profits go reinvested back into good causes. It obviously generates social value. So once they assess that they are, then we give them access to the platform. And as I said, they've got completely free membership, which for many of these organisations, might be saving them as much as a couple of £1,000. So, and we're really excited about the support we're getting from this, from the wider buy community. And then the other benefit of that is that as a consequence, we now have social enterprises on the platform that you can actually go in and use the find supplier tool to potentially source and find social enterprises. A lot of people are starting to do this now if they've got a project, not before necessarily pushing something out to the wider supply chain. There might be some areas where they think this would be really good if we could use some social enterprises here, and identifying them on our platform and then actively engaging with those first before they then go to the wider supply chain for some of those activities. So really positive development.
Brilliant. Thank you. I think there's a question for you actually. Is a few questions here.
Yeah.
How can we find a social enterprise, and is there a limit to the number of social enterprises this is available to?
So there's no limit. I think there's about there's there's probably about 70,000, as I understand it, social enterprises in the UK that are actually more than one person, that are actually businesses. If we get 70,000 on our platform, that might bankrupt us. So we want lots on, but hopefully we don't get 70,000. But yeah, there is no limit to the number of social enterprises that we please introduce them and bring them on. How can we find social enterprises? There's a number of options. So as I said, on our platform, if you have access to the sourcing capabilities, and if you don't, please contact us. You can search by type of work, area where you need the work to be done, and specifically ask for social enterprises, and it'll bring those back. And that community of social enterprises is growing all the time. And there's also the social partnership portal, which is run by Scape, and we also offer the same thing there. They also have social enterprises on there as well. So they're probably the supply chain, they also have a platform as well where you can also find social enterprises. So there's certainly more and more of these platforms coming about that are starting to enable social enterprises to be more easily accessed by people who wouldn't have a pre-existing relationship with them.
Yeah, and we'll make sure, Toby, if we can make a note to kind of include links to those where you can do those searches for social enterprise. We'll make sure we include links to the various different portals in the follow-up. One of the questions, what would you recommend is that's getting that senior level buy-in, right? Or anonymous attendee. Somebody said trying to get senior management buy-in for social value, trying to get them to understand the importance, but they just focus on oh, we're losing staff for one day. I think that's a common challenge. I think things are definitely changing. We're hearing less stories like that. But that client piece, I think, I don't know what kind of business you are, but if you can go to your senior management with some kind of summary of what your customers are asking for and your clients and the drivers there, together with, I think there's resources in the school that are really going to help you. So there's short videos, there's short e-learning modules that are all about helping you to get that business case. So things that you can show to other people that it would include maybe your peers or your customers, talking about why this is important, why this is going to help you. Not just because it's the right thing to do, but thinking back to that business case earlier on. But yeah, there's resources that hopefully the school can help with, or if you can get somebody to come along to one of the sessions we run through the school. We've got so many different types of lunch and learns and webinars running all the time. Rob, anything else to highlight on that one around helping to get that senior level buy-in?
Obviously, anything that you can get from your upstream customers. I mean, even if it's not necessarily active tenders, just getting engagement from them and getting them to maybe give you some insight as to what they're seeing and what you can expect as an organisation to be seen in the not too distant future. That signposting what's coming down the road. That's probably going to be your best way, given what you described as the current pushback.
And there's that retention piece as well around your own staff. Again, I don't know what type of business you are, but do you do any surveys within your own business that ask about what they value about their work, and how would they rank, kind of the benefits that the company offers them, and things like, or why do they work for your business? There's all sorts of surveys and questions you can do that help kind of highlight, well, actually, this is something that's helping us retain and attract people as well, attract talent. Somebody's asked around, where was it? I saw a question earlier on. Where would you start internally within the business with incorporating social value? We'll include a link after. We've got a social value learning pathway that sits within the school that's got a few resources in it. That gives you, it kind of does that hand-holding piece and provides you with some where to start. It is that starting piece, but I would say, if you think back to the circle, plan, do, measure, review, at the plan side, it was about consulting your stakeholders, what's important to them. So at a very simple level, you could be, I don't know what type of business you are, but it could be about asking your employees, what's important to them, or finding out what the societal challenges are in your particular region where you're based. You can speak to local authorities, local economic partnerships. There are lots of people out there who can help you understand what the issues are in your own kind of local area. So hopefully that helps. And maybe, are there any more questions? Well, 1 minute beat past. Yeah, I think we're gonna, I'm just seeing the question there from Mark, and I think we're gonna have to go, but Mark, we'll get back to you. And I'm just trying to see, do social value teams typically have a budget to work with? I guess some of them will do, some of them don't. I wouldn't have budgets. I wouldn't be able to kind of share example budgets on that, but we can have a look at all of these questions. Is there anything else, Rob, that you wanted to kind of look at before we close?
No, probably just to re-emphasize the point that many of you as organizations are probably doing things that are deemed as positive from a social value perspective and probably don't realize. I'd really emphasize, just looking at the social value scheme that we have in the platform, like, do you engage with local community? Do you have mental health and well-being programs within your company? Do you have apprenticeship programs? Does your company pay the national local living wage? There are very, very simple things which I imagine a lot of you are probably doing in some shape or form. So it's important that you look at PPN 0620, have a look at the social value scheme on Constructionline and fill it out, because I think that'll give you a lot of guidance. I think a lot of you'll start to find that you've actually probably already got a fairly decent story to start to tell about the organisation, and it's not always about massive of investment of people in your company having to go and do volunteering and things like that, which is a great thing to do, but people naturally think this is going to be a significant cost on the business. Likelihood is you're already doing a lot of things, and doing a little bit more probably isn't going to be that expensive within the organisation.
And that mirrors what the quote from Network Rail at the beginning. It's about adding value, not adding cost.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, everybody. We will get back to you on your questions from Mark and others. We'll get back to you via email to all of you. So please do share your feedback. We're going to be running more sessions as well. We have sessions coming up. There will be one on PPN 0620. So on the 9th of August, and I think a link to that's just been put in the chat for you. And then there's also one, if there's any procurement people or supply chain or commercial, there's one which is specifically around embedding social value in procurement, and that's on the 20th of September. So they're both live on the school calendar. You've got the links in the chat there, and as always, they're free to come along to. So we hope to see you at those. But thank you very much. Thanks, Rob. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you at another webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.